What is up, fellow developers? My name is Tyler Potts, and in today's video we're going to be doing some vanilla form validation and maybe some pop-up messages, error messages too at the bottom here. So if you're ready for that, then stay tuned. Okay guys, so we're going to start off with the bare bones. We're already going to have a form styled up and out here because I'm just focusing on the validation for this video. So I'm going to go through the markup quickly in some of the CSS. So we've got a basic form tag with the ID of register, and this basically is just to cater for our things. Normally you'd have an action on here or something you're going to go to or whatever the actual form is, or you could do the form submission in JavaScript. It's up to you how you submit the form, but this is just a validation before it's submitted. I do recommend you do most of your validation on the server side, because server side will actually validate it safer, because validation on the web browser side, the JavaScript side, you can easily turn off. Okay, so first part here is we have 4 different input elements. We have a first name, which has the type of text and the ID of first name. We have the surname, which is again a type text with surname and ID surname. We also have an email field, which has the type of text. Normally you would have the type of email, but because Chrome has already got some validation for, well, we could do email and say no validate. I think it's that. Let me just double check. I think it's that. So if we did that and we click save and I don't put anything in there, or if I put just tire, there you go. Yeah, so it's still going to validate. So I'm going to change this back to a text field with the ID of email. And normally this can still be an email, but obviously Chrome will add in its own layer of validation, which is kind of annoying, but oh well. You can also have the password input, and obviously the password comes up as dots, but again it can still be validated, and we're going to validate it with a minimum of 8 characters, at least 1 uppercase letter and 1 lowercase letter and 1 number. So it's got to have 1 of each one of these, and it has to match. And then we've just got a submit button with the class with a clear index, it's floating to the right, and we also have a errors box which is literally fixed to the bottom of our page. So in the Sass, again, this code pen is public, so you guys can come and check this out. I'll have the link in the description, so if you want to check any of this out beforehand, then please do. So we've got all this, and basically this is just basic styling. The only thing you really need to know is the errors. So up here, the error actually animates in, and we're not even going to use the close, we're just going to cut it out, so it just slides in to make it a bit nicer, but that's it. The rest of it is just nothing to do with it. So without further ado, let's get on with the form validation. So we're going to do this, we're going to get the register form, so we're going to say reg form is equal to document.query selector, and we're going to say form hashtag register. We're then going to have a const of errors L, which could be equal to document.query selector, and again it's going to be form hashtag register and dot errors, because that's going to be our errors element. We then want to add an event listener to this form, which is going to be equal to submit. So it's going to check for when we submit our form. Oh, we're going to pass through E. Oh, we're actually not going to do a function. We're going to actually split this out into a separate function, which is going to be called validate register form. So we're going to have a function called validate register form, which is going to have pass through an E and an event. And in here, we're just going to put e.prevent default. All prevent default does, so let me comment this out. All it will do is when I click submit, it's going to stop it from submitting, because again, CodePen doesn't actually do that, and we haven't got a backend set up for this. So by doing e.prevent default and clicking submit, as you see, nothing happens. So it just stops it from logging. So normally you would remove this. Well, actually, no, you want this because if you're validating your form, you don't want it to submit before you validated it. So what we want to do here is prevent default, and then we want to say something such as we want to get our elements basically. So we want to get all our elements, but just for reference, once you're done, if you've validated all your code, we just want to say regform.submit, and that will also then submit the form. So first things first, let's get our first name, set that equal to document.querySelector, form hashtag register dot or input hashtag first name. We could just do this. It's probably cleaner. Then we need to get the surname. Then once we've got the surname, we need the email. And after email, we have the password. Oh, please click in there. There we go. So we've got all the elements we need. We now need to, let me just bring this in a little and maybe zoom up one. No, it's probably too big. That's probably good enough. I think it's good enough. Tell me if it's not. We're going to say actually, we're just going to say let errors equal an empty array. And for every error we encounter in our validation, we're going to put a new entry inside of our errors thing here. So we're going to say if first name dot value. So we're going to get the value of this element. So whatever we type in here is equal to the value. Oh, hello. So if we type in here, it's equal to the value. And so we're going to check if it's empty. If it is empty, then we're going to basically say errors dot push. And we're going to pass through a object which is going to have the text of first name, so we can identify what element it is. So when we create our error message, we know what to write. And then we're going to say L, which is going to be equal to our element, which is going to be first name. So that's going to push this error. And basically if nothing's in here, it's going to say there's an error. And we don't want that, do we? So we don't want errors. So we don't want someone to be able to submit without. So this is going to work the exact same for every single one. So we're going to say first name, surname. This one's going to say surname. And again, it's going to say surname. We're then going to get from surname, email. Oh, that's not right. Email and also email. And one last one, email, which is good. And now finally, we're going to get the password. So we're just checking every single one of these to check if it's done. So now we're going to say if errors dot length is more than 0, return false. We also want to say down here return true for now. But up here we're also going to say alert errors. So now if we try to submit without anything filled in, we're going to get errors. If I fill in my name on one and I submit, we're still going to get errors. Still errors. And finally, but if we fill them all in, you'll see I click it, but we get no errors. So if I go down here quickly and I just alert submitted, just so you know, so if I click submit, it's still showing errors. But if I fill this out, even though this isn't validated yet, we're going to validate the email separately, same with the password. You'll see it says submitted this time. That's because I think it's filled out. So that's one step of validation done. We've got the first name, surname, email, and password all validated to check if there is an element. Before we continue on with validating the email and passwords properly with the right validation, like email needs an @ sign, it needs a certain amount of letters and before the @ sign, a certain amount of letters after, and a dot, and then a dot domain. So we will do that. After, we're going to create another function now, and this other function is going to be called handle errors. So we're going to say function handle errors, and it's going to be passed errors. And up here, where we've alerted errors, we're actually going to change this out to be handle errors. And we're going to pass through the errors. We're then going to say let string equal, and this string is basically going to be what is inputted into our HTML error section here. So in here, we're just going to write you have errors with the following fields, and that is it. So then we're going to concatenate on the end of this string all the errors. So what we want to do is we want to get these errors and we want to map through them. We're going to use an arrow function. An arrow function is part of ES6. It's a beautiful tool. And in here we're going to say error, just ER. And we're going to say ER.L. Well, actually, no, first things first. Let me explain what I'm about. Actually, let me do it first. So we're going to say class list dot add, and we're going to add the class of error onto this element. So if this is invalid, it will add in the class of error. And if we go to our CSS, up the top here, you see we have a class error which just adds a border pixel of red. And we're actually going to make this a bright red, just so it's easier to read, or easier to see, should I say, not read. So that's the first step. The next step is on the string, we need to concatenate our error. So we're going to say error, ER dot text plus, and we need a string with a comma. So this gets separated by commas, which is perfect. We could do this a different way as well. We could do, if we would have to separate the array into an array of strings and then use array.join to create a string, but we're not going to do that. We're then going to say errors 0.L.focus, because the first error we have, errors 0.L, the first error we actually have, we're going to focus it. So if surname's our first error, our first name, surname, email, and password, this one will be focused. So if this one is correct but the rest are wrong, this one will be focused. We want to start from the top. So if first name's an error, it will start on first name. If password's the only error, it will only focus on that element, if that makes sense. So that is good. So we've got that. We're going to add a class now called errors. And we've set up the message, but we're not going to do anything with the message yet. So back over here, let's type in Tyler for the first name, which is correct. Also, I have noticed in my CSS that my input also has a focus. So that I'm going to actually make this a green. So I'm going to say 00FF00. It's going to be a very bright green, but it just distinguishes when I'm hovering. There you go. So I'm going to say Tyler pod. But this, I'm not going to fill anything out in email, but in password I'm going to fill something out. So if I click submit, you'll see it also gets this red outline. I'm actually going to change this because over here, input, error, we've got borderline, that's got outline. I'm going to say border here when we focus. And then that means, so we get, we also need to say outline none up here. So now when I select it, it's green. If I put in my name, but no password, you'll see it goes red, which is good. So as soon as we enter something in, and click submit, it says submitted, which is good. That means it would have submitted the form. So that is a good start. So now let's actually display this error message. So the one which is errored, we need to actually tell the user the error we're getting. So we're going to say let error L equal document.create element. And we're going to create a div. I'm going to say error L dot class list dot add, and we're going to say error. We're then going to say error L dot inner text is equal to str, which is our string we created up here. Now we want to basically go down here and say errors L. So the element we grabbed originally, the errors L, we're going to grab that again and we're going to append child, which means we're going to add into it at the start the error element or an element, and we're going to add in the error element, the one we've just created, and now we'll see what happens when this happens. So we've styled this up already. Again, you can check the style out, but let's say if I didn't put my first name in, I just put my last, I put in an email and a password. I click submit. You'll see at the bottom it says you have errors with the following fields. First name, and that is kind of a really cool little way of pulling a toast up. And at the minute, there's no way to close this. So if I was to, let's say, delete my surname too, and click submit, we now get another one, and to go bring up a second one. So we're going to have multiple concatenating. And this is just in case you want to put multiple errors up on screen, but we can have multiple, but they still ain't disappearing, so this could get messy. So now what we want to do is say error L, the one we've just created. We're going to say add event listener off click. We're then going to put a function on this which says errors L dot remove child, and we're going to say error L, which is going to get this element and it's going to remove this element. So if we save, and now we just click submit, it's going to say they're all errored. You have errors with the following fields: first name, surname, email, and password. If we click it, it disappears, which is perfect. Now let's actually validate the email, because at the minute we can just write in anything, click submit, and it although it's still red, that's because we haven't set it up so it resets, but it is actually correct. So if we go back, okay, so let's say Dave, because Dave's right, we submit, you'll see this one is correct, but only first name, surname, and thing is incorrect, but that is wrong. That's not right. So I have gone on the interwebs and found a regex pattern for an email validation, which is this right here. So I'm going to paste this in. I'm not going to lie, I don't have a clue what any of this means. If you know what this means, then I'm pleased. But you can find these sort of email regexes. D stands for regex stands for regular expressions, and regular expressions are used to find patterns in strings. And what this is going to do is we're going to use it to find the pattern inside a string we put in the email. So back down here where we've got if email value is equal to an empty string, we're going to say, so if it's not, we're going to say else if, and we're going to say email reg dot test, and it's going to test something. So we're going to say email dot value. So it's going to test our email dot value against email reg, and it's going to check if it's true. If it is true, it's good. Well, if this matches the regular expression, it will return true. But we want to know if it returns false. If it does return false, we're going to push back the same error we had above. So we're going to push back there's an error with our email, which is still another error. So now if we save and we enter in here Tyler Potts, but this time we just put Dave again, but in our password we put saying, can we click submit? You'll see this has got an error. You have the following error with the following fields: email. As here it states you have to enter a valid email address. So if we now go in here and say Dave at, we click submit, we've still got another error. The reason being that's still not a complete thing. So we're going to say Dave at Dave. We're going to submit. Again, it's still not right. Okay, what are we missing? We need .com. If we click submit, submitted. This can also be anything you want. It could be .uk. Obviously, we can't check if it's valid, like if this actually exists, unless we send out an email, but that requires server-side stuff to do that. So this is the best we could do to validate, is just to make sure it has all the key components of a normal email address. And that is how the email validation works. And again, I'm not going to try and tell you how this works. You can find it in the code pen. I literally just did a Google for email regular expression validation, and this is the best one which came up. So I can see an @ symbol. I presume that just means, does it have an @ symbol? But yeah, so this is very confusing to me, and it probably is to you too. Don't worry about it. There's so much documentation, so many people out there to help you with this sort of thing that if you want to learn it and you have the time to learn it, then I would, but you don't have to learn it. So the next thing we're going to do is the password. So once again, I've gone on the internet and I have found another regular expression. I can't explain this to you exactly, but another regular expression in here. And what this regular expression does is it checks the password if we have a minimum of 8 characters. As you can see here, it's checking for 8 characters. Obviously, if you know what that means, good job. I actually don't. I just know that's an 8, and that makes sense. It must have at least one uppercase letter. So it needs at least one uppercase letter and one lowercase letter. We also need one number. So we're also going to check if this has a number. We then also need to make sure it has a minimum of 8. So that is how this is working. So once again, we're going to go down to password. We're going to say else if, and we're going to say not passreg dot test, and we're going to say password dot value, and then we're going to push the same. So if it's errored, we're going to push the same thing down there. So now once again, we're going to fill this out. We're going to say dave@dave.com. The password is going to be just test. I'm just going to put test. I'm going to submit. It's wrong. And that is because there's only 4 characters. Okay, so let's say test. That's 8, right? Submit. That's still wrong. Okay, so what happens if we capitalize the T in the first test? It's still wrong. We need a number. So let's add 1. There you go. That's submitted. But now, what happens if we say test 1 without a capital letter? It's still an error. So it's all working very right. It's working right. Everything looks like it's going well. And that is how you do validation in JavaScript. There's a lot more ways you can do this. This is just one of the simpler ways of doing form validation. It's just by writing if statements, checking with regex if it all matches. More complex ways would be to have some sort of class-powered email or password one. You could do a switch statement to check your forms. You could do many different ways, but this is probably the simplest and the quickest way of doing form validation. So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you want to see more form validation, the next form validation I'm thinking of doing is form validation when you type. So as you're typing, it'll validate it as you type. So let's say if I was writing in here the characters, it would turn green. This box will turn green as soon as it was correct, and it would go red until it is correct. So that is one way you can do things. So thank you guys for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to leave a thumbs up. If you're new around here, subscribe. We do these videos daily up until the end of January, and then it's probably weekly from there. So thank you for watching this video, guys, and peace out.
Always do it on my own, so I gotta get through it. And the only thing I know is to love what I'm doing. Never give up, never slow, till I finally prove it. Never listen to the no's, I just